Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan MS Pearce. This is a Ukraine war news update. First part thereof for the 2nd of April 2025. I'm wearing my Canadian top again in solidarity with my brothers and sisters in Canada, Canada, and elsewhere around the world, because this is Liberation Day, where we are going to be liberated from the evils of economic stability. The trade war is going to start today. Let's have a look at the Ukrainian general staff figures for the Russian losses for the day before. All the usual caveats apply, of course. You can find them linked in the description to the video below. Some fairly significant numbers. Some of the ups and downs may have been as a result of weather changes over the last week, but they have, the figures that is, have been pretty consistently high. The personnel losses have come down a little bit, 1,410, but that's still a huge number to have lost. 10 tanks is a snip above the daily average, 24 troop-carrying AFVs likewise, and 24 artillery systems in the same sort of place there. So some pretty challenging numbers there for the Russians. 41 vehicles and fuel tanks, so that's way down. I wonder if yesterday saw fewer attacks than the day before. There is quite a bit of video coming out now. I've talked to you about this already, that for a few weeks, over the negotiation period, as it kind of was, it still is, right? But when the US started really getting involved in negotiations, started seeing a lot fewer attacks across the front line. I was talking about Russia culminating. It could have been weather. It could have been negotiations putting a pause on things. Now it seems to, I mean, the numbers go up as the video, the amount of video footage available goes up as well. So there is definitely a correlation there, as far as I'm concerned anyway. And yeah, quite a few videos to reference today. But yeah, it's going to be challenging for the Russians. Question is, what's it like for the Ukrainians? And although we don't have Andrew Perpetua, his loss lists at the moment, we do have Jakub Yanovsky. I haven't shown these. I could have shown these for the last however long. They're a bit too black and white for me. I just love the way Andrew Perpetua does his. Nonetheless, it's worth looking at these, just having a quick squiz at them. It is worth noting that the Ukrainian numbers are higher, but half of those losses, says Jakub, are likely from Kursk, so that'll be the left behind vehicles. And if we look at the Ukrainian vehicles, there are an awful lot of these infantry fighting vehicles, APCs, MRAPs and whatnot. If you look down here, you've got quite a few M113s. There's Marder, 4 Bradleys. We've got some Iveco, Senator, Rochelle, Senator, a few of those, etc., etc. So, you know, quite a wide range of equipment there. And we've got, what else? Some tanks, but most of those old Soviet tanks. So that's all of them old Soviet tanks, I think. Yeah, there you go. 3 Bushmasters destroyed there. 2 PBV302. So those are the APCs that went obsolete in, well, they stopped being used by the Swedes in 2014, if I remember. They've given a bunch of those to Ukraine. BVS-10, is that the Barnsvan? Is that the articulated one? Tracked vehicle that can is water. It's amphibious to a degree, I think. Got some Strikers, VABs, YPR 765. So yeah, quite a lot of infantry mobility vehicles, which would be typical of Kursk, that's for sure. Now for the Russian losses, so that was, what was it, 68 there for the Ukrainians, 52 for the Russians. I don't know how often he's doing them at the moment. It was sort of every 2 to 3 days. So this isn't like a single day, whereas Andrew Perpetua's would be a single day. And I think Andrew's loss lists are far more complete as well. And he's talked about the differences as to why that is quite a lot. Although here you've got unknown tanks, unknown T-80s, unknown this. Andrew will include a lot more stuff that is not fully verifiable, as in you can't verify exactly what, identifiable is the word I mean, actually. Oryx might be a little bit similar. I know there are others, like, is it War Spotting and other providers, or other OSINT aggregators who will not put things on their lists if they can't 100% identify what it is. But anyway, as you can see here, Russians losing quite a lot of infantry fighting vehicles, quite a few BMPs on there, BTRs, and then a fair number of tanks, more tanks on the Russian list than the Ukrainian list, that's for sure. But yeah, that's for you guys who are missing at least some lists. What do we have? So here's a video of, I'm going to make sure if I press play, it will turn off the mute because it's so annoying, guaranteed. Oh, it didn't. God, now it's not doing what I predicted to do. Half the time when I press play, it just turns off the mute. Right, Ukrainian kamikaze drones have taken out 3 landing boats, I think, in this. 3 Russian landing boats in the Crimea area. Interesting bit of footage here where you've got a Tor air defense system sort of firing off at you can see that over there. Missing the drone here, obviously gathering that a drone is in the area and is a threat. But yeah, the Ukrainians are able to take out a range of equipment, particularly in that Crimea area. And I don't know whether this is a drone that's being used off a USV, an unmanned surface vehicle, those Magura V5 type Sea Baby drones that are used as repeaters, effectively drone repeaters. So they go out the drone with the drones loaded on top of them. Drone takes off, goes and hits a target at, say, for example, 20 kilometers from the sea drone, the surface drone. And that means that you can control a smaller FPV drone from much further back because you're bouncing it off the much larger repeated drone in the water. And so we have seen these drones target air defense systems and radars within a 20-kilometer range from the coast, but obviously they're taking out ships or boats here as well, which is good to see. Now, other videos have come out of some pretty significant attacks, but it's interesting to note the sorts of vehicles that are being used in these attacks. And this goes to the analysis I was reading from the Institute for the Study of War yesterday, that they are running low on tanks. I think they're running low on a lot of significant material, and I think their replacement numbers are very low. And that's why we're seeing all of these sorts of motorcycle and buggy attacks. So the 5th Assault Brigade has halted a Russian motorcycle rally, says Nell reports, in thick fog in the Kramatorsk forest, eliminating 18 motorcyclists, 3 armoured vehicles and 2 transport vehicles. I think that's incredible there. And it does go to show how many motorcycles and buggies they're using. And one would presume it's because they have to, because they don't have enough of the other equipment. We have also talked previously that there are some advantages for using these vehicles too. So don't forget that. It's not just woe is the Russians. They are having to use these motorcycles. Actually, certain circumstances, it means you need far more munitions to take out all those, 20 people in an infantry fighting vehicle or 20 people on motorcycles in different places. It's going to be harder to take out those 20 people when they're on motorcycles. Now, the 3rd Mechanized Battalion of the Presidential Brigade has destroyed an enemy column in the Novopavlivka direction. I mean, again, lots of destruction of equipment being evidenced here. So this is the same footage here. Ukrainian forces annihilated a Russian convoy in the Pokrovsk front. Russian troops tried to use poor weather for a surprise push. So that's that reference to poor weather. It could be why we have seen a little bit of up and down over the last week. But sending 3 infantry fighting vehicles, infantry themselves, and a swarm of motorcycles. But Ukraine's Presidential and 31st Brigade stopped them cold and wiped them out. Those who ran off didn't get far. And this is a different situation to the one here, as far as I'm aware. So this is no, not that one. That's the same to this one. So these 18 motorcyclists in the Kramatorsk front, that is different from this Pokrovsk front. So there are several pieces of video footage of destroyed convoys and whatnot. Here, War Translated's Dmitry talks to this idea. This man here says, we have nothing left to ride on such war horses. According to Putin, the Russian army plans to finish off the Ukrainians. So remember, Putin the other day said he's going to finish off the Ukrainians. And here you got someone saying, well, you know, I'd like to show you what I'm driving at the moment. So let's read through that. I'd like to show you our war horse, he says, on which we also ride out to the task. A drone unit rides it out to conduct reconnaissance. And as you can see, it's pretty, well, of the enemy. It's a, pretty battered old motorcycle. Our vehicle is a combat vehicle with the call sign Alik. Why Alik? Because until he's hungover, he won't drive. I don't know what the reference there is. The vehicle is a beast. It came to us. You could say trophy, a trophy. There's nothing else for us to ride. There, we drive it. This is where we sit, and he goes over to show the sidecar. This is where we will take the gasoline. We always have a spare with us. Here are smoke grenades, just in case. Grenades as well. You never know. Just incredible. So you got something like that. It says you got this sidecar. I mean, it's a plank of wood attached to the side of the motorcycle with a wooden crate with a few grenades in, and that's their I presume their drone reconnaissance crew that goes and drives out on this to do their task, as he says. That's all they have to use. So pretty desperate times for at least that particular unit. Now we're going to move on to guided glide bombs. Over 10,000 guided aerial bombs have been dropped on Ukraine by the Russians in just 3 months. Wow. Ukraine's Ministry of Defense. This is despite the fact that Russia used 40,000 bombs in 2024. I don't think despite is, I think that's exactly the same sort of numbers. 10,000 over 3 months, times that by 4, that's 40,000 in a year. So it's exactly the same numbers, which is very significant because A, that's a lot of bombs, and B, that's a consistent rate of dropping them. So there was a period where it went down over the last year, and then it has gone back up. I think that was when they were moving them up to use them against Kursk, and there could have been some issues with having a few planes shot down or something. But just an awful lot of guided glide bombs. Now, I keep mentioning the Ukrainians themselves are releasing an awful lot of footage to do with the use of guided glide bombs. Kherson Oblast, a pair of Ukrainian JDAM-ER bombs fused as bunker busters slam through the roof of a Russian command bunker, detonating inside. The strike reportedly eliminated a number of Russian officers running operations near Kherson city. So that would, if it's true, be a very significant strike, and it could go as well towards this idea that some of the high numbers of personnel losses might be to do with the proliferation of guided glide bombs released by the Ukrainians on the front line. And indeed, here we have, and this is a fascinating bit of footage, Ukraine's 299th Tactical Aviation Brigade at work. So I'm going to show you a couple of bits of footage of pilots doing their stuff, Ukrainian pilots. And you'll see here, there's quite a lot of firing off of munitions very quickly. You see them just flashing through those. This is only a very short video. But yeah, you get to see a few missiles and guided glide bombs maybe released by these pilots or this pilot. Now, the point of showing you that, it's a bit of aerial footage. And this one, at night I work on air defense, by day as a bomber. So here we have what looks like a MiG-29 pilot taking out a Shahed drone. So let's go and look at what he said, and then we're going to do a little bit of analysis or speculation. Fighter pilot Denfix destroys 2 Shaheds on a air defense mission there. So that at night he's defending the skies, and then in daytime he's going and doing offensive operations. He's got a MiG-29 frontline fighter. That's what's said here. Of course. One of his tasks is to intercept, I'm going to have to pause that, is to intercept and destroy Russian cruise missiles and attack drones, which he obviously is doing successfully there. And then we go on. I don't know. The pilot has more than 24 destroyed cruise missiles and drones to his credit. So 24 for that pilot alone. So these aircraft are doing a lot of very good work defensively, but they're also, as I say, dropping a lot of guided glide bombs and munitions on the Russians. Now, as this source here, Bandera Fella, says, Ukrainian fighter jets are dropping precision-guided bombs straight onto Russian troop concentrations across multiple front lines. High altitude, high accuracy, zero warning, maximum damage. It's all very positive. And then we have this source, Colonel retired Jeff in Austria, who is a strategic transatlanticist, combat veteran, former senior US diplomat, and award-winning author who works with The Hill, BBC, Newsweek, and more. So that's who he is. Says, for 2 years I've stated air power would be key for Ukraine to gain an advantage. The pieces appear to be falling into place. So he's very bullish about where the Ukrainians are with their aircraft and kind of having an air advantage potentially. Now, I think that's overstating it, because if we look back at the amount of bombs that the Russians are able to release and that are still releasing right now, if that is true, then they are absolutely hammering the Ukrainians on the front line with their bombs still. And the Ukrainians might have upped it with the advent of the F-16s and the Mirages. And every night I go to sleep, the same things, I always have this ritual of, right, what would I give to Ukraine if I could? And I just run through in my head, you know, the things that I think Ukraine would really profit from if they were given now. And actually, recently, I am of the thought that actually aeroplanes like your F-16s, more F-16s. Like I said, 200 F-16s is what they want. Just more F-16s, more Mirages, get some Gripens. I just get a sense that if they could wrest back the advantage, then that would be super, super awesome. Now, I don't think they're there yet. So where this source is saying the pieces, it's improving, right, is what I would say. But I don't think they are going to gain an advantage anytime particularly soon. However, they have, as we've seen over time, been very much concentrating on attriting Russian air defense. And I think that's all part of it, right? And it's interesting looking at the conversation below here. Don't they have to take down Russian air defenses first? I read 2 years ago that Ukraine needs 200 F-16s or an equivalently potent force to achieve that. And how far is Ukraine today from this target? Do you agree with the 200 estimate or have something else in mind? So Jeff says, Russia used S-300s in a ground-to-ground role, and the remaining S-300s or 400s have been prioritized to protect big cities. That's interesting because we are seeing fewer S-300s getting taken out at the moment. And I think that's probably true, that they, as he says here, they don't have enough to go around. Remember, I always use the rug analogy, where the rug is too small for the bed, and when you put it in one direction, you are revealing your feet at the other end of the bed, and you pull it back over your feet, and then it's, that's the situation with air defense in Russia. They don't have enough to go around, he says, and Putin will protect cities before he protects soldiers. But then other people saying, zero chance. Ukraine's likely dropping less than 10 bombs a day, and many of them are small diameter bombs. Russia is dropping as many as 150 to 180 bombs per day, and this gap will never get closed. Russia projected to drop 250 to 300 per day by the end of this year. Now, I think there's definitely an element of truth in there. I think Ukraine are probably dropping more than that at the moment, potentially. But there is just a huge difference between the two, and the source here, the retired colonel, says you're wrong, but actually I don't know that it is that wrong. As someone else says, except they don't have an advantage. You're watching selectively edited clips. Yeah, they're working and hitting things, but that doesn't mean they have the advantage overall. And he says, you said they don't have the advantage, show me how. At least I presented some evidence, albeit perhaps not enough. It's still more than you did. Yeah. But I would say, no, that it probably is selective. And I keep talking about this, how although there's more footage coming out, there will be a kind of selection bias, and we just don't know that actually represents, the amount of published footage of guided glide bombs exploding doesn't necessarily reflect who is doing more of that. So you might even have more footage of Ukrainian bombs going off, and yet the ratio could still be like 50-1 of Russian to Ukrainian usage of these guided glide bombs. So just loads of caveats need to be applied to this. However, I do think there is a change, that it is improving for the Ukrainians, and I would like to see more F-16s and more Mirages and Gripens and Eurofighters and everything they can get their hands on. Now, staying on the same topic, the Russians tried to blow up their own dam in Popovka. So Popovka is just over the border into Belgorod, one of these places that Ukraine has supposedly taken. Now, here's a Fab 3000, supposedly. That is a massive bomb. It's an absolute beast of a bomb. So this is a guided bomb that's normally used to, as Genkiev says, to drop on Ukrainian families to prevent the possibility of Ukraine advancing, but it failed. So they're trying to blow up this dam, and that would release all this water to then cause flooding all around there, which would make it much, much more difficult for the Ukrainians to advance in that area. I don't know if you remember when I talked about Popovka, I said it's actually behind. That is Popovka, it's Demidovka, and it is Popovka that's behind this lake. And actually, it was. If this is, I don't know what direction this video is in. But I remember if you look at the left of the screen, it's like the Ukrainian border comes down here. Popovka is the other side of the lake, and they had to. It's much closer to the border, but they had to wait until they were further on in Demidovka before they could come back and take Popovka, because I think there's all this water in the way. So now, if the Russians are trying to blow that up, it just makes it even more difficult for the Ukrainians, but they haven't succeeded in so doing. Right. Tim White says regular followers will know that personnel changes, more support and better defences managed to slow the Russian advance. Figures from March produced by Deep State Agentstvo show the invaders gained the least amount of ground in 9 months, but it's still the wrong direction. So this is the amount of ground, I presume square kilometres of territory that the Russians gained. Dynamics of the advance in square kilometres of Russian troops in Ukraine. So March is the lowest since last June 2024, which is good news for Ukraine. However, I don't think that includes Kursk. And what happened in Kursk is that the Russians took back like 600 square kilometres. So you add that to the March figures, and it looks vastly different. Okay, so just be warned. This graph also shows territory gained, and in fact, in March you've got enemy assault square kilometers lost. So this is also showing, I think, stats without Kursk. But anyway, this graph shows the price of Russian advancement in Ukraine in recent months. In November 2024, it took Russians 7.1 attacks on average to advance 1 square kilometre. In December and January, this number grew to 15.9 and 15.7 respectively. In February, it took Russians 17.1 attacks to capture 1 square kilometre of land. Now, I presume, though, that this statistical analysis is slightly fairer, because although you're not talking about Kursk in terms of square kilometers lost to the Russians, you're probably not including the attacks in Kursk as well. So I think this is just looking at frontline attacks and kilometers lost. So actually this is a fair analysis rather than looking on at a month-on-month graph to get a sense of how well the Ukrainians have done, or how not badly they've done. What's interesting here is that if this doesn't include Kursk on both counts, then you are seeing the Russians expend much more in terms of effort, and probably therefore personnel and material, in taking ground. The things are becoming increasingly difficult for the Russians. That could be because they are, again, going back to using motorcycles, buggies to attack. Everything is becoming a bit more, belabored and whatnot. And they aren't attacking with convoys of 30 to 60 vehicles. They're attacking with 10 vehicles, comprising mainly, infantry fighting vehicles if they're lucky, but track garden sheds, buggies, motorcycles, so on and so forth. Okay, now we are on to distance strikes, and it's already been 25 minutes. Sorry, guys. Okay, I'll be fairly quick. Not too much to report here. 74 drones launched, 41 were taken out, 20 by electronic warfare. That's 61. So actually 13 out of 74. That's still not the greatest of interception rates, and that is definitely a challenge still. Not a crazy amount of detail coming through, but thank you very much. Cup of tea from the missus as well today. She's got a meeting that she's doing from home, so lucky me. Russian drone strikes hit Kharkiv, injuring 8, including 3 children. Russia, it seems like weird to go from look, my missus give me a cup of tea to 8 people have been injured, including 3 children in Kharkiv. Russian forces launched 15 drone strikes on Kharkiv after midnight on the 2nd of April. So again, what we're seeing is a pooling of drones around individual places and overwhelming those places. I hate to say I told you so, as in that was what I suggested that either side did much earlier on in a war. But it's odd that it's taken them that long to realise that they should do that, rather than spread all of those drones around the whole of Ukraine. So each individual place only has like 2 or 3 drones that attack it. Well, you can cope with that. But if they just to remind you what's happening at the moment, like say Odessa, and Odessa was hit. Here's Odessa. Multiple drone strikes on Odessa. 4 drones may have hit the city. Explosions reported there. Strikes to the west of Odessa near the Khilodarsky district. No further news at the moment. But what happens, say, in Odessa is these drones, like 20 drones, will go for Odessa, but they won't go, let's launch a drone, quick, get another one, launch that, and you have a stream of drones. You can cope with that. You're like, take that down, wait a few minutes, take that one down. So they send all these drones, and then before they attack the city, they just wait. They circle in maybe over the ocean where it's quite safe for them, which is why I think the Ukrainians have been developing these boats with guns on, drones as well, but also these patrol boats that have air defense systems on board. But anyway, that aside, they then start kind of, these drones come and then hang out above the water, above the Black Sea, until they've accumulated like 20 of those drones, and then all at once those 20 hit Odessa. And of course you then have to, rather than dealing with one after the other, that's easy, relatively speaking. You've got 20 at once, you're in trouble. That's overwhelming. Here the Ukrainians 4 have got through it, and therefore you're thinking strategic targets will have been hit. On the other hand, Ukraine picked up their attacks last night. We haven't really seen and heard anything from Ukraine. Kursk was targeted, as you can see from some video footage. Taganrog in Rostov was targeted. Powerful explosions rocked Russia overnight amid a massive drone attack, says no reports. Moscow claims its air defenses shot down 93 drones over Kursk, Rostov and Belgorod. So that's all very close to Ukraine. Just over the border in Rostov, which is down sort of Mariupol way, corner of the Sea of Azov Sea. Then you've got Belgorod and Kursk just over the border to the north. These were the places that were targeted last night by the Ukrainians. Here, Taganrog, there's footage of Taganrog on fire there as a result of falling debris. So that looks like a drone that was shot down. And then, no battle damage assessment as of yet, as what may have happened on either side, really. But there was definitely a marked rise in drones from Ukraine, at least last night. German IRIS-T and Russian missiles shot down by it. This is a report in DW, the German state media site. So four KH-101 cruise missiles were destroyed from this system in 30 seconds. So in 30 seconds, they were able to take out 4 of those cruise missiles. And these IRIS-Ts, I think, are being really well received, and that's why they keep getting given them. It seems that Germany is just consistently providing IRIS-T. IRIS-T is a missile, so the IRIS-T SLS and SLM launchers that go along with them. But yeah, really good stats, I think, coming from them. They seem to be well received. Now, the energy truce has collapsed, according to Nexter here. 45,000 lose power in Kherson, in a striking Kherson quote. This is from the Foreign Minister, Andriy Sybiha. Russia continues to violate the post-Riyadh agreement not to strike energy infrastructure. He said, new attacks damage facilities in Kherson, Kharkiv and Poltava. Today's strike, so it's yesterday, on Kherson left 45,000 people in the dark. Now, that's all part of the peace negotiations. We're going to do just a little run through what's been going on over the last few days and going forward. But first of all, let's look at exports collapsing and the Russian economy is crumbling, says this pro-Ukrainian source, Slava Ukraine. The Russian economy is collapsing rapidly. Coal exports, a key pillar of the Kremlin's raw materials budget, have dropped sharply in March. Coal industry's economic decline is evident, and this is absolutely true. I mean, they've had a mare. March statistics show a catastrophic fall in exports. The Institute of Energy and Finance reports coal shipments through major ports fell by 30% in Ust-Luz and 21% in Nakotka and Skidny compared to last March. Coal prices hit rock bottom. Record low global thermal coal prices trading at 63 to 66 per ton. Dollars per ton since June 2024 are below the profitability threshold for most Russian producers. So not only are they not exporting enough of it, but their price per ton is at a rate that is not profit making. This is probably quite an important story here in terms of is it a game changer? I don't know. Euromaidan Press reports, as many have, that Ukraine caught a Russian propagandist in Poland and he was extradited to Kyiv after a joint Ukraine-Poland operation and now faces 12 years in prison. In other words, the EU is extraditing people to Ukraine. This is very important. The suspect, reportedly Kirill Molchanov, appeared 35 times on Solovyov's, another propagandist show, justifying Russia's invasion. Molchanov fled Ukraine and worked for both Russia's Federal Security Service and Russian foreign intelligence while organising anti-Ukraine protests across Europe, calling for reductions in international support for Ukraine. He used his Telegram channel to encourage terrorist acts in Ukraine by reposting Russian intelligence chatbots that collect information on Ukrainian defence forces. So he has been extradited to Ukraine. I think that's quite significant. Right, just to give you a flavour of what the Russian press is saying. So this morning's Russian press says, according to Steve Rosenberg, a BBC journalist out in Moscow, one Russian newspaper today accuses the Trump administration of, quote, administrative insanity, inexperience, immaturity, and of bragging and arrogance. Another paper on Ukraine talks, Donald's mood changes as often as the wind. So as you would expect, there's going to be a lot of criticism. Well, you don't always expect it because it depends what plays well for them. And they are trying to exert reflexive control over Trump so that they being Russia, the Kremlin, the FSB, want Trump to be choosing in particular ways, right? So they force him, they manipulate him, they try and curate the landscape, the context within which Trump is making these decisions, and then hopefully he makes them in the favour of the Kremlin, as they would hope. So sometimes their rhetoric is to try and manipulate him to say certain things, and other times it tells you exactly what they think of the US. And I think this is quite correct. Administrative insanity, inexperience, I keep saying that, and immaturity. I think that's just so naive, some of these people. But anyway, you have Caroline Leavitt in the White House saying that there is the both sidesism. Trump is frustrated with leaders on both sides, she said, of this war. He wants this war to end. Our team continues to be engaged with the Russians as we are with the Ukrainians, and the president continues to be very, very much engaged on this topic. Now, this annoys me because I think it's disgusting that you could be frustrated with the leader of a country that is fighting for its life, that is trying to get as much help as possible, and then you start screwing it over and doing an extortionate minerals deal where, you know, there are so many incredible bits of cartoon artwork that have been produced over what's going on with this situation where Putin has, you know, Ukraine by the neck, if you like, with a knife in its face, and meanwhile, you know, Trump is stealing Zelensky's watch or whatever. It's just that kind of stuff. It's to get frustrated with both sides, I think, is just not reading the room. But of course, it's what the US want to communicate, because they are trying to say, hey, we are not on either of these guys' sides. So where they were very clearly on the side of Ukraine up until January the 20th, they're like, right, we're no longer on Ukraine's side. We're just sitting objectively neutral in the middle, whilst also trying to just engorge ourselves on the riches of both Russia and Ukraine. Now, the claim is that Trump is disappointed with Putin, though. This is kind of going a bit behind the scenes. So, in other words, the reality is that it is Putin that is frustrating things. This is Jackie Heinrich, who I think is with Fox News. So, Trump believes Putin is stalling. The admin is eyeing aggressive sanctions enforcement, including on the Russian shadow fleet. A source familiar with the discussions tells Fox that President Trump is frustrated with Putin and believes Russia is slow-rolling comprehensive ceasefire talks. A path forward is being discussed. I'm told sanctions, says Heinrich, enforcement is currently low. I've been reporting on that. Unfortunately, they've kind of taken their foot off on sanctions, informally measured at about a level of 3 out of 10. So the US is measuring their sanctions enforcement at 3 out of 10. And interdictions of Russia's shadow fleet carrying illicit oil through the Baltic Sea would be an easy target for pressure. Fox is told most of the fleet is already sanctioned, so this is about enforcement. That's the point. We've got the sanctions, we're just not enforcing them. We're enforcing them at 3 out of 10. That's not good enough. That's not good enough. 70% of Russia's illicit oil sales comes through the use of their shadow fleet. But the good news is that, you know, it does seem that they are getting annoyed with Russia, at least behind the scenes. That's what is the case. Now, Reuters is reporting that Putin refuses to end the war and talks are at a deadlock. Russia has rejected the US proposals and demands Ukraine abandon NATO, fully cede 4 regions, and downsize its military. And I'd say that's actually 5 regions, because that would be Crimea as well. So this is the maximalist set of objectives from Putin, and the US probably feel like, I mean, in another world, they'll be like, yeah, whatever, that's cool, we don't mind, we don't care. But actually, I think that's kind of where they're at. But they also realise that Ukraine would never sign up for that. And that then puts the US in a frustrating position, because that puts them at a deadlock, which is exactly what we all predicted, right? Like, and this goes back to, like, we said this 6 months ago, talking about, well, how are you going to do this, Trump? You said you're going to solve it in one day. And I think he literally believed he could. And this is where you come back to the Russians saying they have an administrative insanity and they're inexperienced and immature. So Russia's going, well, look, we want this. You're not giving that to us. You don't know what you're talking about, the US. And meanwhile, Ukraine are going, well, we're not going to sign up to that. That's insane. So both sides are looking at the Americans, I think, and thinking, well, you're inexperienced and immature and insane if you think either of us are going to sign up to what you're demanding. And then the Trump administration is getting really frustrated because there's no movement. Of course there's no movement. This is the whole problem. Like, this is literally... And so the naive, it is just a pure naivety. These guys are naive and they sent in real amateurs. You know, Mike Walls, Steve Witkoff, Marco Rubio. These are rank amateurs. Don't know what they're doing. Mike Walls his district has just been up for a vote yesterday. So he's gone from being a congressman Steve Witkoff has gone from being a golf-playing real estate mogul, and Marco Rubio has gone from being a senator that was, albeit really harsh against Russia, to being a negotiator against the FSB and against Putin and these seasoned experts. And these people are just not fit for purpose at the moment, and Rubio's now towing a party line that's completely antithetical to what he originally was espousing. Senior Trump administration officials say a ceasefire in Ukraine is unlikely to be reached in the next few months. So now we were a hair's breadth away. We were closer than we ever been. We're like 1 yard line or whatever. All these different claims from the Trump team. Now, it's not going to be done in the next few months. US officials, including Trump himself, are growing increasingly disillusioned with Moscow, according again to Reuters. That's that Reuters piece. Who knew? Oh, all of us. Anton Gerashenko reports that Annalena Baerbock, the German foreign minister, is on the peace talks and the need to strengthen Ukraine, was saying Putin is stalling. She's in Kyiv yesterday. Putin is stalling for time. He's trying to wriggle out of negotiations by continuing his war of aggression. There will only be real and lasting peace when the Russian president realizes that he cannot win this war. Now, that's the reality of the situation. Yeah? Talking about peace or a ceasefire alone does not create peace or a ceasefire. We will only achieve a ceasefire when there are no more shootings and no more attacks. Ukraine has made it clear that it is not only ready for this, but also accepts a ceasefire without preconditions. She says the one who does not is the Russian president. There is no other explanation for the attack on a power plant in Kharkiv this morning, even though there was an agreement that these facilities should not be attacked anymore. Putin is stalling for time. He's trying to wriggle out of negotiations by continuing his war of aggression, violating international law and escalating brutal drone attacks on residential homes. There will only be real and lasting peace when the Russian president realizes that he cannot win this war and that his destruction is not successful. That is why it is so important to have these negotiations for Ukraine from a position of strength. We are for Ukraine's strength, and that is why there can be no preconditions for a ceasefire, for the sake of a ceasefire.
Frieden oder...
Absolutely correct from Annalena Baerbock there. Then we hear, right, you've got Dmitriev. So Dmitriev is... Okay, so what's happening? Putin's negotiator, Dmitriev, has confirmed he may visit the US this week. He responded maybe to reports about his potential trip to Washington. He will meet with Steve Witkoff with sanctions temporarily lifted for his visit. So in order for him to go to the US, they have to lift sanctions on this guy. And you might think, oh, this is good. The Russians are going to the US to do some negotiations over Ukraine and to get peace. But remember, this is about Ukraine without Ukraine. And the other point that's so important is, who is this guy? What's his role? His role is economic cooperation. He's not going to sort peace out concerning Ukraine, or if it is in order to bring about big money transactions between the US and Russia. Who's he speaking to? Steve Witkoff. Who's he? A real estate mogul. Who is also naive and weak. So this is a guy who knows how it all works, going to take advantage of a guy that doesn't know how it all works and keeps spouting Russian propaganda. And it's all going to be about doing deals over trade. So that's where we leave it. Anyway, thanks for watching. Take care, guys. Really appreciate your support. I'm likely to do a live today because I'm off for a week on Friday. I'll still be doing recordings during that week, so don't worry, but there will be far fewer recordings. So I'm going to squeeze out a live. It'll probably be the only one for sort of a week or so. Anyway, in the meantime, take care, guys. Speak to you soon.